We are currently experiencing a wealth transfer that we never agreed to, that will not only change our lives, but define future generations to come. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is look at the growing divide between the wealthy elites and the have-nots.
Just how out of step or underprepared are we for this great wealth transfer?
The rich appear to be getting richer, and it may be at the expense of everyone else.
The growing gap between rich and poor Americans is one of the biggest challenges facing the country. Get this, the richest 1% controls more wealth now than at any time in more than a half century.
While most understand that our quality of life is being chipped away at by inflation, too many people are still blind to the fact that our wealth isn't disappearing. It's merely changing hands. In this year's election, the #1 concern by voters is the economy. And it's no wonder, given the fact that the majority of Americans are still struggling to keep up with the basic costs of living. But on paper, we're told that the GDP is growing, the economy is strong, and that you have nothing to worry about. But in reality, we're seeing a propped up system fueled by government overspending that directly benefits those in power, those who are already wealthy, and hurting the average American, creating a further gap between classes as evident in the rapid disappearance of the middle class. Owning a house, a car, and being able to provide a quality life for your family is the American dream. And in the 1950s to the early 1970s, this was attainable for most. If you set your mind to it and you worked hard, you could absolutely achieve that dream. But in 1971, something changed. President Richard Nixon delinked the dollar from gold.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold.
This allowed the United States to print more dollars, inviting inflation to take hold and chip away at the average American's purchasing power. This was the beginning of the end of the golden age of the middle class. Now, those who had the foresight to put their wealth in a safe haven asset such as gold were able to protect their wealth, whereas those who stored their wealth in the dollar and trusted the government not only lost their savings, but struggled to maintain their standard of living. And today, history repeats itself. The confiscation of wealth through inflation has picked up speed, with the dollar losing 25% of its purchasing power in the last 4 years. But despite this dollar decline, there are those who have still come out on top, boosted by a strong gain in income, home equity, and stock market wealth. The wealthiest of Americans, the top percentage, are single-handedly sustaining the U.S. consumer-driven economy, which in part explains some of the disconnect between the economic data and the reality that the majority of Americans are facing every day. This is because income has not kept up with the rising costs of goods and services for most middle-class earners, meaning that the data we're constantly being told around wage growth really just represents a smaller, already wealthy percentage of the population. The rich getting richer at your expense. There was an influx of cash into the system, an overprinting of dollars that took away your savings, they took from you and directly gave to them, escalating a trend that's been going on for 50 years, which brings me to my next point. This growing divide, it didn't happen accidentally. Politicians and government officials, they have no incentive to stop spending. They're not punished for their overspending. They have no reason to stop accumulating more debt, not when it directly benefits the elites and their wealthy friends. The concern being that the entire system is set up where there is no end to the spend, meaning that the divide between the haves and the have-nots will continue to grow wider and wider apart as your dollar loses more and more of its value. And what really gets me is that all of this manufactured growth creates an illusion of prosperity, an illusion of stability, allowing the media and the government to tell us again and again what an incredible job they are doing, telling us that while showing us that they could care less about the average American. And the really sad part about this is that it's not bad enough that they're already taking your wealth. They're also making you question whether this was your fault. well, I'm working hard, I'm doing everything right. Why aren't I moving up? It must be something that I'm doing. This only supports their narrative. Look over here, not over here at what we're doing, when the reality is we live in a system that punishes savers. Savings doesn't benefit them. It doesn't create economic growth. It creates stability for you, doesn't allow them to have any control. No, so what do? They have inflation so that they can still take your savings away from you. They took 1/4 of American savings through inflation in the last 4.5 years alone. Once you realize that the system was never designed for us in the first place, everything becomes so much clearer. And the real concern becomes, okay, we know the system itself is broken, but what happens when it fully cracks, when it fully collapses? What happens next? Those in positions of power are already preparing for this. In the meantime, they're squeezing out all the juice they can, but when there is no juice left to squeeze, that's when they wipe the monopoly board clean and start over with a new currency, a currency reset, a revalued currency, whatever you want to call it. It's when the life cycle of our current currency, the currency life cycle we're in, comes to a close. Now, it's not happening yet because there are still chips on the board, but we can all feel it, that it's moving at a more rapid pace, that's what's coming next, which is why central banks and some of the smartest people I know see the writing on the wall and are preparing for what's coming next. There are a lot of naysayers out there who say, oh, it's too late. If you didn't start preparing X amount of years ago, it's too late. I say I disagree. I disagree completely, because you can always sit there and look at hindsight being 2020 and think, I wish I had protected my wealth 4 years ago with physical gold, because I know everything I had in a savings account lost its value, right? That always happens in the dot-com bubble or in 2008. There are so many people who thought, I wish I had acted sooner. But the thing is that we are in a unique position right now where it is evident what is coming next. We can all see it, we can all feel it, but it hasn't fully happened. It started, but it's a process. And it is not too late to protect yourself with physical gold and silver outside of this broken system before the full end of the current currency life cycle. We are in a unique position right now. And I always talk about how education is key, because it is. But it is action, taking action, that will protect you, that will protect your wealth, that will maintain your standard of living, and that will set you up and position yourself for opportunities on the other side. And I know that's important to a lot of you watching. So if any of this concerns you, talk to a member of our team. Talk to one of our expert analysts, because unlike traditional financial advisors or someone you might have working at a bank or an institution where they are paid to make sure that you stay inside of that system that's not designed for you, our team understands currency life cycles. They have decades of experience in helping people like you protect themselves outside of government control, outside of inflation, outside of policymaking, in a way that will set you up for success. It's very easy. You can either click the Calendly link in the description below and set up a time that works for you, or call the number at the bottom of my screen and talk to a member of our team. Because again, if you ask me, what can I do today to protect myself? It is so important to make sure that you have your insurance policy in place for what's coming next outside of the system. And our team will help you make sure you have just that in place. And as always, I so appreciate you being here. I'm Taylor Kenny with ITM Trading, your trusted source for all things gold, silver, and lifelong wealth protection. Until next time.